Today I'm going to go over my video about do we need sign cards in Weiss Schwarz? The answer is yes. We know sign cards come in multiple forms. There's a bunch of different rarities. To us, generally, that would be the SP and SEC variety. There are other rarities that do contain signatures, but let's just keep it simple. What this video was looking to do was to prove to you that this is very much needed. And by doing so, what I did was I put a bunch of screenshots together, and that compared the English unsigned version to what the going rate on UUTE was for the JP signed version. What I did also was I included the sales, if there were any sales. Again, these were coming from TCG Player, the current amount for sale, and the current price of these cards. So if you consider all of that together, plus this last slide that I put on my video, you'd be able to figure out what is actually happening with the pricing of the signed cards. The reason why I didn't tell you all this right away was because, again, I don't need to just, what work always said, download information to you. What I want people to start seeing is how Weiss Schwarz prices, what people actually buy, like what the actual trends of that is, right? Because you don't just need my opinion. I want you to form an opinion as well. In order to do this, I'm going to use these slides because I will inevitably forget something if I do not. So I'm just gonna use this. It's easier. So first thought I had was current prices. When we take a look at the current prices, Magia Record Anime definitely is depressed pricing wise, and I'm gonna say that generally. There are some cards that you will see that are higher in prices, but overall you can tell that it's not as high as it most likely should be. Kaguya and Heaven's Field 2, comparatively to each other, they both have similar pricing. And let's just take a look. So again, Magia Record, there are cards here that have a higher price. So like this Iroha and Felicia and Saruno. But overall, we got a 73, a 69, a 95, an 89, a 69, and you got these cards right here that haven't sold. Right? You don't have any sales for these cards. So Kaguya, though, we got a 500, 599, and if you take a look, there have been sales on these cards, but generally they've been holding the price pretty good. And let's see, this one down here was not sold, and not coincidentally, this is a trial deck as well card. If you take a look here, that was one of the other things I wanted to point out was this is a trial deck, these two. And this is a trial deck card as well. Okay, so when you take a look at Kaguya and compare it to Fate Stay Night, what we got here is similar pricing, right? They're all holding above a certain amount, except for the dude. That's always going to happen, that the guy is going to be lower. But in general, right, if you compare Kaguya and Heaven's Field 2, roughly same pricing. Okay, next we got anime following, and again, people can argue with me on this one, but for me, Magia Record, not as popular. There is a new season if anybody's checking it out. I've been watching it, so pretty excited that there is another one. Luckily, it's going on the other side of showing Madoka and what is Sayaka and Homura. In the first couple episodes. So if you want to take a look at that, it's good. So again, it's not as popular when you take a look at Kaguya, which is overly popular, and then Fate Stay Night, which is popular and has been out there for a really long time, right? So it's got some name recognition. Next, we got deck strength, and again, this played an important role in the prices of these SP cards. So Magia Record Anime, bottom of A tier, Kaguya near the top of the S tier, along with Fate Stay Night, Heaven's Field 2, right? And again, that's Heaven's Field 2 with all the other stuff before it. right? So you need to have that all together. So deck strength is pretty important, as you'll come to find out. So one of the other bullets I had there for you was supply of the set and timing of the release. I combined it together, but what I see here is that this is the number one consideration when you look at the prices of the SPs. So I went a little further back and I went to Data Live. You know, Data Live started out with not enough, right? There was that whole everybody freaking out, this thing going up to what, 200 immediately, booster box wise. And then a reprint happened. And that meant we had an oversupply. We had an oversupply of cards, SPs, whatever you want to call it. Magia Record came out, and I'm talking about the Magia Record Anime. So there was enough of this printed, but at the same time, there was a light amount of it, right? We don't have a ton of it out there. We just had enough. So Bofuri, same deal with that one. Enough, though it was pretty light. Kaguya, there was enough supply, but slightly overbought. Heaven's Feel was enough. And again, when you consider all of this, Data Live, the pre-order was December. Magia Record Anime, January. Bofuri was February. What ended up happening was a lot of people ended up buying into Data Live when it right here, and then the anime, we knew Magia Record Anime wasn't going to be the strongest thing ever, so again, that was purchased enough, but light. Bofuri, same deal. And then when people started realizing that Weiss Schwarz was I guess you could say, a collectible game, it got more interest. People started buying more of Kaguya, right? Like, that's why there was enough, but a little bit of an oversupply. So, and then we had Heaven's Feel 2. That thing kept getting pushed back, and it was due to COVID, but it was also due to the Data Live reprint shoving it further and further back. So that's our timeline of what actually happened back then. Okay, so when you take a look at the supply of SPs, as we know, no matter what set it is, it could be an awesome set like Data Live, and depending on how much is actually out there, it's going to drop the price. And that oversupply is leading people not to buy it, or at least they're waiting out for a good price to come up. So it's hilarious because I see a lot of people that don't know about Weiss talking about this card, thinking that it's going to be worth $1,200. And even to this day, I saw one on one of my groups that I'm currently in, and they're saying, I pulled this card, it's $1,100. And I'm like, no, it's not $1,100. They showed a picture of TCG Player, and it is not $1,100. It is $669 is what I saw it last sold for. I mean, if you press me hard enough, again, I would say it probably would go for $750. So we know that there is a heavy supply of SPs. And when I take a look back here, this definitely goes into how much these things will actually sell for, right? So no matter what, there is going to be dumping on Facebook. We can't capture all these prices because people are getting rid of these cards on Facebook. But this just proves again to me that there is only so many people that are going to buy this stuff, right? No matter how awesome the card is, people aren't going to be willing to dump hundreds of dollars on these cards. The only way that's going to happen is if you cut the prices, or if there wasn't enough of the card to begin with. So what actually ends up, who actually ends up buying these things? So the funny part about when this first came out, when we found out that there were going to be no signed cards, was I heard a lot about investors and let them buy it all because they're idiots. But in reality, they aren't idiots. They know what a good card is and what a good card isn't. Because again, you could point out to Magia Record here. And Magia Record, really, really cheap prices when you think of SPs. But somehow, some way, not many people are really buying these. So you can't just blanket sweep say, you know what, let's just have the collectors go and buy these things. because in the end they know it's not worth it. It's more worth it to target certain cards. And what ends up actually happening is, from what I'm starting to see, is cards are being bought for their usability, right? What we see here is cards are being bought like Supreme Bliss Chica. So Supreme Bliss Chica is your Ricky, and if you take a look here, it sold pretty well. Right here we had 285, 350, 400. So overall, sold pretty well. There's not that huge of a supply left on TCG Player, right? We see 3, and again, to me, I don't think anybody's going to buy it for these prices. For also the fact that it's not even signed. I do like this card in general myself, but would I buy a non-signed card for 600? No. This is where people start saying, you know what, you might want to just buy it off the JP version. You should buy the JP version of the card if you want the signed card. And as you can see here, what ended up happening is it's gone. So I see a lot happening where if people wanted a signed version of a card, they may just buy the Japanese version of it. And I was not surprised to see some of these cards just missing. Again, what we need to ask ourselves is, how useful is this card? How pretty is this card? Do people like this character? And in the case of Supreme Bliss Chica, again, highly playable card. Card actually looks fabulous, and at the same time, the price is right for what it's sold at. I wouldn't tell anybody to buy it for 600. That's insane. But again, considering everything I just said right there, when you take a look at the other cards, right, there is higher supply in some of these other cards, and it is for just that very reason, right? People don't need to have 4 versions of this card at this price when it's not even actually signed. Now I want to address the fact of TDSPs, and what we have here again is that same kind of thought process about how useful is the card, the pricing, are you going to use it in a deck? And when it comes to confrontation with Humans Toka, again, this is actually signed card. What we have here is a horrible attempt to make a lot of money, right? So confrontation with Humans Toka is a very, very awesome card that comes from your trial deck. Again, trial deck was not reprinted for Data Live, and basically what you see here is no sales. And again, TCG Player prices, there are sales on Facebook, but heck of a lot lower. This thing will never sell for $1,700. I don't care unless some guy really, really loves this card. And even though a card is signed, and in this case highly playable, price does matter. When I take a look at Bofuri, what we have here is we have a card, actually 2 cards, Face of the Game Maple and Marble Muffler Sally, that are both usable. They're both from the trial deck, and they're both actually sold out. Because again, the price was right. It actually even recently sold. So August 17th for $700. And then we also have Sally here for $500. I guess people really wanted it. That was my whole thing about like why trial decks for Bofuri are still available. I don't really get it. Outside of if you think these people actually already pulled the SPs from the actual trial decks, that it's not going to matter. But then we get here, right? Again, so we are on Kaguya Love is War. Here is the trial deck, 400, not for sale. I mean, well, not sold actually. When we take a look at Magia Record, same story. Magia Record, no sales. There's one for sale. We have this one, this Iroha, and there's 6 of them for sale, no sales. So trial decks are a special case because there hasn't been very many sales if there were no signed cards. And again, it needs to be a pretty strong card to actually make a sale. The Kaguya, you could say it is a good card, but at the same time, if I take a look at Kaguya, this version right here, the art's okay. $400 is a lot, considering you could back in the day buy Supreme Bliss Chica, which would be, I think, better. You could buy this Kaguya, which I love way better. And, there is use for this Chica here. So, overall, I think the pricing matters, and also we have a trend with TDs not selling. So, anybody that ever thought that you could just buy trial decks without any care because there's a special SP in it, you really need to consider the fact that trial decks are a lot harder to sell, especially if they're not as useful and if they don't have any signs on it. So finally, what we got is SAO. SAO here, where is he? There he is. So we have SAO coming up. As we know, they are not going to have sign cards either. What's going to actually be listed on here is, in place of the handwritten quotes, character names and voice actor signatures. There will be a redesigned quotes and character names. But the best part about this one is it's going to have serial numbers on it. I know some people are going to be like, ooh, serial numbers. That's not going to do anything. It's just collector crap. But in the end, it adds a little bit more rarity to a card. And I know people are going to say that, again, it's just overpriced. I don't think it will be. I guarantee that these SP serial numbers are going to go for a heck of a lot, especially if you get Asuna, right? There's all this big hubbub about like Asuna and all the past cards from her. You can imagine what people are going to be willing to pay for a serial number, especially if you get like 1 out of 10. And then when you take a look at all these other cards, right, we know Yu-Gi-Oh is going to not be good. And Kirito, maybe. But at the same time, you have all these other nice looking cards, especially the Shinon. I think that's going to be a fancy looking one and a nice price. So we will see what happens. I know overall that SAO is a strong, popular anime, and these cards are not just your plain looking cards, right? They overall have a nice look to it, and the serial number is going to add a lot of collectability. So at the end of the day, sign cards, not sign cards, what I have come to find out is this is super important. Not having signs on them is a humongous big deal. English. So again, part of that UUT pricing that I did was the English prices are now. English prices were supposed to be greater than UUT, and that trend is broken. It is considerably broken, right? If you want to take a look at Bofuri, every one of these cards are higher in English than it was the JP version, right? And it sold pretty well. When you take a look at, in general, what happens here with quintessential quintuplets, I know we didn't get it out yet, but if you compare these cards right here that just have their name stamped on it to any of the other ones, it's a heck of a lot lower. So this is just a perfect example about what happens when you get a non-signed card versus a signed card. And then, again, with Kaguya, there were some cards here that were lower English wise than it was in the JP version. And at the same time, you don't have as many sales, I would say, versus the Japanese version, right? So again, pricing matters, but at the same time, unless you sell those cards, it's not going to matter. So for me personally, what I see happening, and this is my whole contention, no matter what price is showing, even if it looks reasonable, right? Even if this 150 looks reasonable, it's not reasonable enough. That price needs to drop in order to actually sell, because people don't find these to be special cards anymore. This is just something with gold foiling on it. And that, well, I don't know if it's gold foil or gold ink, whatever the heck it is. It's not special. And I mean, like you could see that here. Not one person wanted it at 400. So that leads me to say people don't want these cards, and you need to drop them lower in order for it to actually sell, because that price trend here is completely broken. You don't have this English greater than JP anymore, and you can see that with Kaguya overall. To sum it up, there's going to need to be some improvements that happen here. And what that improvement is we need cards to be, these SP unsigned cards, they have to all be A to S tier cards. Like, there is no doubt in my mind that that's the only way these will actually sell, right? We know investors aren't going to soak it up. We know collectors will buy, let's say, one. But the max rarity people, the actual players that will use these cards need to be super solid. If not, you're going to have this kind of situation here where you have a lot of supply of cards and nobody wanting them, right? Like you can see here on Magia Record as well. What then you need to do is you need to have serial numbers on these things. I will 100% say when SAO comes out, and again, we have serial numbers slapped on there, people will be looking to buy those. It doesn't matter what you think, that's seriously going to happen. It is more collectible to have a serial number than not any serial number, and you can see that across the board on any other card game that's done it. You could also change the art that goes with the serial number cards as well, so it makes it even more super special, but in the end, I know serial numbers will have a impact versus not actually happening. And last, the card just needs to be incredible looking, right? When you have something as, let's say, a double whammy like Chica here, where it's a highly playable card and the card itself is really good looking, you're gonna have people buy it, right? That's why it's been selling around, let's say, $300 to $400 for those very reasons, and you can see why the supply of them is just two, where you have other cards that are a lot more. There you go. In the end, I feel like we 100% need signed cards. If you can't have them, then that's what you need to actually do to improve it.